Okay, we are back with our next interview, Dr. Sweta Chakraborty, who is a climate behaviorist and U.S. president for We Don't Have Time. Welcome to Sidebar.
Thank you for having me here.
All right, so for folks who don't know what We Don't Have Time is, can you just explain a little bit about what your organization does?
Yeah, so we are the largest social media for climate solutions. What that means is we have our own platform and app, which users can download for free and immediately get connected to other users around the world to talk about different actions that are being taken on climate change. What are some solutions? How do we scale these solutions? How do we accelerate together, really seeing through solutions to the climate crisis? So we knew that there was a need for this type of app and platform. And we decided we were going to launch it 6 years ago. That's what We Don't Have Time is. But it also requires key partnerships. So we partnered with Twitter, Spotify, soon LinkedIn. And our platform is where these conversations around climate solutions start, but then they make their way through the social media landscape. So you can continue them on LinkedIn, you can continue them on Facebook, and ultimately the end goal is coming together to collectively, we can solve this climate crisis.
I love that. That is the running theme throughout all of these interviews. So you yourself are a human risk and behavioral scientist, which is incredibly cool. So what does that role entail, and how does it connect to human reactions to the climate crisis?
Yeah, it wasn't so cool when I graduated in it, like 15 plus years ago, without giving away my age too, obviously. But now it's definitely something that society is beginning to recognize is critical to seeing through solutions to the climate crisis, right? We've got so many tools and so many technologies to address climate change, but we're in a communications crisis too, because now we need to deploy these tools. We need to get the political will and make sure policymakers make the tough decisions to actually see these tools into commercial viability so we can, again, solve this climate crisis. So as a behavioral scientist, 15 years ago, it was hard to kind of explain how important it was to communicate and use the science of communication to communicate solutions to really see through behavioral widespread change across society. So we could adopt these tools, we can get behind it, we can get behind policies that are evidence-based. And now being a behavioral scientist, in this role at We Don't Have Time, I get to make sure that this social media platform that we have is incorporating all of the advances in behavioral and communication science. Are we making sure the way we reach people actually reaches them, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to just put information out there. Are you sure it's going to resonate? Are audiences going to actually act on it in the way that you were hoping and intending? So that's behavioral science. So making sure that your comms tool is not just dropping information into the ether, but rather we're actually predicting behavioral outcomes. We're predicting societal support of solutions to the climate crisis.
Yeah, that feels important just because we're thrown so much information every day. So for this message to actually reach people and resonate, it has to be strong for sure.
And it has to take into account what different perceptions are that different audiences already have. Yeah. Some people, you might just be saying the wrong thing completely, and so it's in one ear and out the other. So taking the time to understand what people care about, what values they have, what misconceptions or erroneous beliefs might be there, makes your communications that much more impactful.
And as two members of the editorial team, that is incredibly impactful for us in our writing and how we want to communicate our own stories. And so I just want to wrap this up, but there's one point that I thought was really interesting, which is human behavior is predictable. I mean, you have phrases like history repeats itself. Right. So given humanity's reaction to the climate crisis thus far, do you think there's any chance of us breaking our predetermined patterns?
Because we know how the brain works now, right? We know what the quirks of our wiring is, and it worked out for us to reach this point in where we are in the world at this time of life of humans since the dawn of our species, right? So we know, we have so much more knowledge. We know how our brains work. Based on that, I have serious hope that we can overcome some of that wiring that isn't helpful to us, that allows us to ignore things like climate change and care too much about things like, I love a Britney Spears story, okay, but care too much about pop culture, maybe obsess too much over politics and what our political identities are. So if we can actually take what we know about how the brain works, apply it to closing that gap between people's perceptions and reality, making people acknowledge that we need to come together and come up with solutions to climate, we can do anything. We can totally overcome this climate crisis.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on. It feels positive. Yes! Thank you so much for joining us at Sidebar. We're looking forward to your talk later today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it too.
Thanks.